All right, so I'm going to document the underlying issue that we're having. And the context is we have made 132 PIDs, and now we are beginning to model our plant 3D piping. And I'm using the PID line list, and I would like to, let's say that I'd like to lay line 89. So I would believe that I'd be able to come over here and just hit place. And when I would do that, finish, I would think that when I select this, I should get the correct service, which I do not. Under here underneath service, it is pulling it in as A. That's wrong. And it looks like that's about it. It is pulling the spec in correctly. It is pulling the size in correctly. So I'm liking all that. And then technical area is what this third one is right here. And that is actually not declared anywhere in here. So I need to make that property for my piping objects. So this is the underlying issue. And we will then go ahead and we will explore what's causing it and how to fix it. Okay, so I have created a new project, as we can see up here, tip number 2, and I have taken my PID line list, this drawing, did a place item, already did it on that one, so we'll just do a new one now. And I just want to be clear on some things here, just document them. My line number tag coming as 81, no question marks. Same thing with this, no question marks, perfect. Let's take a look at the elbow. No question marks. If we do a entire line number, we will now see that we get a varies on this stuff. However, service is still coming in correctly, so that's positive. And I think we're good. And then lastly, earlier we were having issues with the connector, so I'll just select that and just see how that's all coming in. And connector does seem to be pulling information incorrectly again, minus service. So we'll go ahead in here and project setup and try to figure out why it's doing this. Okay, and instead of actually taking a look at it in project setup first, I said, well, doesn't it make more sense to maybe look at project manager, or sorry, data manager, and the actual PID instead? And it does. And so what I've done here is I'm looking at the pipeline group, and I can see that our team has created this acquired service custom group, or custom property, sorry. So we'll look at how that is acquiring it. And apparently it is acquiring it from pipelines.service. So it sounds like it's acquiring it from a segment, and then yet service right here is set to just always be A. My understanding is the reason why they did that is so that they could select the entire segment here, or sorry, the entire group, and in properties they could set the service all at once. So we come down here to where service is, they can set it all at once doing this, versus they would have to select each individual one and do it that way instead. So that is something that they did for drafting, speed of drafting. Okay, so we've launched project setup here, and now we begin to ask ourselves a few things. The first thing I'm going to check is Plant 3D line group, and I can see that there is no acquisition set here for anything. So okay, next let's take a look at our pipe run components and see what they are set to acquire. We can see they're set to acquire quite a bit here. And so the one that we're interested right now is in service. Okay, so it is actually set to acquire. And let's see what it's set to acquire. Okay, so it is line group.service. Okay, so we then need to ask ourselves why line group service, since it's not set to acquire anything special in here, where it's acquiring anything at all, and that would be under PID object mapping. So for there, we'll go to pipeline group. For the PID pipeline group class, I'm trying to be specific with my words there, we are saying the pipeline group class and PID is set to map to the plant 3D line group. And this is how it's set to map. And instantly I can see that the issue here is that service for PID group is matched to plant 3D property service, which would work if, but you saw data manager, we had that all set to A. So we actually need to set this to no mapping, and rather need to set the plant 3D property service to acquire the acquired service, just to work with how we were setting things up. And so we will actually check that to validate. And I'll come out of here. Okay, and then now when I come in here, and I'm actually going to place the exact same line that I was before. I'm not running any plant refresh acquisition properties either. We'll just go ahead and see how this works. So now we are acquiring the service here, so I'm happy to see that. However, I'm now seeing that my line number tag is no longer coming in, and that is perplexing to me. That seems incorrect. And so I'm going to investigate that, because I think earlier it was coming in just fine. And we'll just take a look at these and see what they're now reading. See, these are now saying the 8, like they're just how they were earlier. So I wonder if this has anything to do with me inserting a new line number. I think there's a lot more going on underneath the surface here, so we're just dissecting it one by one. So I'm going to insert an entirely new line number from the line list, PID line list, and this one's going to be 82. Okay, and so we'll just take a look now at just this guy. Service should be coming in correct. Service coming in correct, and line number is not coming in correct. Okay, so then let's make sure the second pipe segment, that line number is also coming in correct. And it is, no question marks. I'm very happy to see that. And then lastly, and the reason why I'm being so diligent here and checking all this stuff is because this is my attempt number 2. So we had a lot of issues going on prior, and I am now okay. So even my output's coming in, and then we'll check 2 more things. Sorry about the speed here. We're going to take a look at the connector here, and even the connector is working. Okay, and then lastly, we will then do an add selection. We'll do the entire line number, and I should see the tag here for all these should say 82 with no question mark. Service is coming in. I'm very happy about all this right now. So that's some good progress. And then now what we need to do, we need to make a few more modifications to our setup. And you can see currently our, let me just select one object here. Our tag is incorrect per what our PID tags are. So you can see that our tag here just has size, service, and line number. We actually want this to have size, service, technical area, line number, and then spec. And so next we will be taking a few minutes and trying to accomplish that. Okay, and at this point in the video, we're back into project setup, and this will be a little bit of trial and error, but I won't waste your time. I'll try to lay out 2 schools of thought. When I first come in here, if you're new to Plant 3D and project setups, your first question is going to be, do I need to be looking at my Plant 3D line group tag and its tag format, which would be, we're on line group here. I need to be looking at this format, which right now is just set to target object number, or do I need to be looking at my pipe run component tag, which is down here? So I am not sure at the moment, and what I'm going to do is sit on here first and go from there. And I do think it's interesting. I'll just say a few things. I don't know what tag here should be. For example, should it be acquiring anything, or should it be left how it is? And then same thing on Plant 3D Align group. We have a tag here. Should that be acquiring anything? I am unsure at the moment. And additionally, I would say one thing. I do believe under pipe run component, my line number tag is currently pulling the line group tag. And I think that it's working right now. And why is it? It's because the line group is set to the tag format name is set to just pull line is set to pull number. I think based on a video that I've seen, one of the only videos is actually on Plant 3D. It's called mapping a drawing property to a Plant 3D pipeline group tag. Very long name. They had said, he said for this tagging system that he's making work, it's very specific that it should be set to line group dot number here. And I think that makes more sense because you're really targeting what you're really after here, and that is truly, in fact, the number and not the tag. So I'll go ahead and just set that right now, and then we'll go ahead and we'll continue on with what we're actually here to solve, which is adjusting our pipe run component tag entirely. So to do that, I think I just need to edit this. So I'm actually going to do a new here, and we'll set it to that. And we already said that it should be size, service, technical area, line number, and then spec. Okay, so it should be size, service, line number tag, and I think that is correct because I do not think that there is just a number field. And then technical area, we actually don't have that available to us right now. So I can't delete that, so we'll leave that how that is. This needs to change to technical area, and then so for this property here, that the fourth one down, that will be line number as we just said, and from that I think that we do want to use the target objects property, and I do think that we do want to just target this line number tag, which is actually pulling from our line group. So it should be no different if I actually did pipeline group here. It should be no different, but I will leave it how it is. Do line number tag, and then lastly spec, which is actually already being pulled in correctly. I don't even think we've talked about the PID object mapping yet. I guess we touched on it. Come back up here to spec, wherever that is at. Okay, and we need to fix this just to be technical area, but that is not a property of our pipe run component class. Okay, and so I'm just going to come down here, and we will change that for the time being. Yep, we're just going to hit apply, and then I do need to specifically I need my piping, and I need pipe to have a property in here that is technical area. So this is a child of the parent pipe run component class, and so in here I will create a property name called technical area, and I think we will create that as a string and go from there. And I'm going to pause it and just think about this. Okay, so I did make that. You just didn't see me hit OK, essentially. So I made that in a pipe run component. Now I came up here to PID object mapping lines, TE new pipeline. That is what all of our plant PID S lines are made of. They're all this one, and so we've done our mapping here. I thought we had done our mapping here. Apparently all of our mapping is actually within pipeline groups. That's interesting to me. So what we'll try to do here is, at least for technical area, we will map that to the newly created technical area for pipe. So that'll be there, and that is the only thing that is mapped in here, other than I guess size. Interesting. And then now when we come back to the pipe run component, we take a look at technical area, which is down here. It is not acquiring it from anywhere, and it should be okay, assuming that it somehow acquires that value from the PID object mapping. and I think we're good. And so we can take a look at this. And so none of this is actually set to acquire from anywhere. And that's why I do think that we're fine. So all of this is actually being mapped in from PID object mapping, though the acquisition fields are all empty. So I think the same thing should be applied to here. I shouldn't need to apply an acquisition group to technical area because I'm not pulling it from line group. I'm pulling it, the object mapping is doing the mapping for me. So at this point I'll hit apply. We'll test it out. Okay, so we've closed project setup and I've drawn a new line here. And it's interesting. Our tag is coming in how I would like it to. However, the technical area is wrong. And so we come down here to technical area. Oh, that's actually super interesting. Technical area is actually perfectly, it's right. It's just I forgot to change the last thing in project setup. So I think right now, I think we're good. I think we made a lot of headway here, and I think we've solved all of our issues. And I think that I touched all the right things and no more than what I needed to. Whereas on attempt 1, I had some circular references going on in line group. I was touching a line group too much, I think. So we started to run into issues there. Just things weren't working, and so I was like, okay, let's start all over again. Kind of take what we've learned so far. We had made some headway, and I was like, okay, let's restart and go from there. So I think this has been very productive, and so we'll just come down here and modify this last one, and again. And so in just a moment here, I will talk about some questions I maybe still have, and what we could do about them. So there's technical area, and now I'm very confident that this will work as expected. So I'm gonna, before I hit OK, I just want to come over here to Plant 3D line group. I don't fully understand line groups yet on the Plant 3D side of things, and specifically what I don't understand is the tag format name. I think that's interesting. I don't get it. Also, I feel like the acquisition here is kind of interesting in that we had the PID object mapping set up, but nowhere in here does it tell you that it's pulling any of this information from that object mapping. So I feel like that's kind of a nuance where it kind of should be telling you that, but it's fine that it doesn't, I suppose. And then lastly, you can see here, like what I didn't do, for example, is on when I did like my pipeline segments, it's just pipe. I did not say my pipeline group as another add entity here and try to map it on there. We tried to do that on the very first attempt. Never did anything for us, never worked. So I think we've done pretty good here. I guess the only question I have really is just what the heck is the tag format mean for pipeline group? And I think that's really my only question. And so at this point, we'll just hit OK, and we'll see how this works. All right, moment of truth. We'll draw a brand new line. It's not been drawn yet. Oops. Okay, let's take a look at our properties here. Let me just move this so everybody can see. Okay. Everything's coming in perfect. That's really good news to hear. So I'm very happy with the headway that we've made today. And then I think we've solved all our problems. The very last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a look at tracing type and tracing spec. We actually do have that in the PID, so I will get that stuff to come in next. So feel free to stick around for that or go on your way. Okay, so hopefully we can continue our win rate thus far and not make any mistakes. So I'm now looking at pipe run component. And I do see that we are trying to pull in already tracing spec and tracing type, which is in line with the lightning bolt symbol or the acquisition symbol that we had in properties a moment ago. So now that we have this in here, I did not change this. We will now take a look at Plant 3D line group and just see if there's anything there. So I'm seeing, for example, spec and type, no acquisition set on them, so I now know that I need to go to PID object mapping, and we should see here, this is interesting, there is no, because now I'm slightly confused, there is no insulation on here. So now I need to take a step back and wonder if my the pipe run component, I believe that this is set up incorrectly, and I think that instead of it saying line group, it should say no acquisition at all, and it should rather be pulling this stuff in from the PID object mapping underneath the pipeline segments component. And to test this out, what we will do so I do not have under the TE new pipeline, which all of our S lines are drawn off of. I have tracing down here. It's tracing, not tracing type or tracing spec. It just says tracing. I think that's fine. And what we will do is we'll map that to tracing type. Simple as that. Come back over here to pipe run component. I'm going to remove this entirely. I think I'm going to get rid of that. Cool. Okay, and then for tracing type, again, I'm going to get rid of the Plant 3D line group tracing type entirely, because it is now pulling that in from. I am confused on tracing type here, if this should be a list or if this should be a string. So that may be something we need to look at here. And then lastly, it was trying to pull that in from P3D line group. So let's just be clear here. Those were options in pipeline spec. However, an object mapping under pipeline group of the PID class, there is no that is not a property underneath here. The tracing is not. That's why I don't think we're going to do anything with it in here. And that's why I think, again, the object mapping to here, take care of it. Let's take a look. Okay, I've come over here to my PID, and line 88 has tracing H, and actually it is a list already, so I think this will be in line with what I was seeing over there in terms of pipe run component trying to pull a list, not a string. And so we'll come back over here to our test. And now if I draw pipeline 88, hopefully we have proven these concepts and we have a core foundational understanding of them. Let's draw something like that. Hopefully that property is not pulling in correctly. Tracing spec is here. I do not see tracing type. It appears as though I've messed something up. Well, tracing spec is here. You can see tracing type is no longer here. And additionally, that tracing spec is no longer a formula. And that is interesting to me. So I've clearly messed a few things up on that one. Hit rate is no longer 100%, but we'll see what I can do about it. I'll report back. Just to be clear, came back to the PID, and I'm actually looking at a line segment, not a line group, line segment, TE new pipe. Tracing is here at this one that we added, so it is on that segment. But if we come over here to pipeline group, I actually disable the show blank rows, we will not see a field here for tracing at all. And when I take a look at a separate line that is not line 88, it's line 83, I inserted it earlier, it does still have tracing type on here, which I do think is interesting. So, and I'm seeing here, okay, that the list that's populating is different than the available list that we had on PID. So we just need to take a look at that. I think maybe it should be set up as a string, or if it's going to be set up as a list and pipe run component class, I believe that it should have at least the same list as the PID line segment list for tracing. And lastly, but we've actually come over here back in project setup, PID drawing setups, not Plan 3D. PID class, lines, pipeline segments. So we're at the parent, and we actually are looking at tracing here. And I've just selected the property type of list, hit edit, and now this is the list that we have available to us. And so I will use GreenShot here, best screenshotting software out there. Just capture that list, and we'll start comparing. Alrighty, so I've actually got it to work, and I thought that it might have to do with the issue of the list. So the way I approached the trial and error of determining if it was that is I just went to object mapping, and for that line, instead of putting it to tracing type, which is a list underneath pipe run component, as we saw, I changed it to spec, tracing spec. Why? Because tracing spec is listed as a string under pipe run component class. And when I did that, and so I didn't change anything in here. Everything is the exact same in here. And I'm just now mapping tracing spec to that, as I just said. And so then when I came in here, I had already had that pipe drawn, and I actually did a plant refresh acquisition properties, and I expected it to work. It did not work, but as soon as I deleted it and reinserted, redrew that pipe off of the PID line list over here, this guy, it worked. And when I came down here, tracing spec, it is pulling it in now. Now I do have the capabilities of still changing that, so I think we're maybe going to want to do something about that. And let's see if our elbow and our connectors inherited that property. So this is a pipeline asset. It should be underneath the pipe run component parent class, and it does not appear to be inheriting the tracing spec, and that would make sense because I only mapped the line PID line segment to the Plant 3D pipe object. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this video up here. I'm still trying to get the tracing to come in on the elbows. So far, I'm very unsuccessful. Right now I'm in the PID object mapping. I'm just gonna tell you what's not been working for me. I might not conclude it in this video. I might pin something at the end of it, but so we got everything working for our pipe when we did PID object mapping via the pipeline segments. And I tried to do the elbow, and to do that I just came over here to add, and I was just thinking that if I could target under pipe run component elbows, then it'll be fine. And you can see that's pipe in there, so I hit this, hit OK, and that's how it's pulled into here. And you can see the tracing spec, but it does not populate anything, so it's not working for me right now. So the last thought I had was, okay, it's not coming in, so let's just come down here to the pipe run component class and target elbows specifically, and on tracing spec down here, let's just set it to acquisition. I do notice that it's got the asterisk here, which means it's declared higher up. So I think if I come over here and I take a look at pipe, it shouldn't affect pipe, hopefully. And it's not. Okay. But we'll see if this works. Really, at this point, I think that I should remove both of these, since neither of these were working. So get them out of here. And I will try to wrap this up ASAP, and then lastly we'll just double check this, that stayed. I'm assuming this was already set, had to have been. So at that point we'll hit OK. And before I run the plant refresh acquisition properties, I do have the elbow selected as a class elbow. And just to be clear, you can see down here the tracing spec is now pulling in from some place, so that's good. And in case you noticed it, the technical area is messed up right now. I know that it is. I'm not worried about that. I know the fix. So we'll then run the plant refresh. Hopefully, when I select this, it comes in. If not, we will redraw it. It did not look like it came in. Okay, understood. Last moment of truth here. Alright, so I've redrawn it, and unfortunately, it still did not work. So right now I've got the pipe selected. You can see tracing spec has been brought in there. And when I take a look at the elbow tracing spec, still question mark. So that kind of is telling me it's not sure where it's pulling from, and I've just got some work to do on that. So I think we'll end it here, and hopefully everything else though has helped clarify how to set some of this stuff up, because it is difficult and there is very little documentation out there. Alright, and I lied. We're going to continue the video on. We're going to try two things. We're going to try doing it in the line group. I'm not so sure it's going to work. If it doesn't do it in the line group, I know exactly how to fix it via PID object mapping, and we'll go from there. So I'm in P3D line group class, and under tracing spec, we are going to target the pipe segment, the pipe run component. I think specifically I want to target piping. We will do tracing spec. And so now I'm trying to handle it via the line group. I was trying to avoid the line group method to begin with, because I was like, well, what if only a portion of your stuff's traced? So, and lastly, we will come back in here to where elbow was, I believe is where we were editing this stuff before. This wasn't working, so I think, and that's why I'm skeptical this line group thing is going to work, because if this wasn't working, then why would the other stuff work? And so I'm actually going to remove this acquisition property, which hopefully is not a mistake. Hopefully that's not what we needed to make it work, and we'll go from there. Okay, for the record, that did not work. I then went back into the elbow class and added it to target the pipeline group. Also didn't work, didn't expect it to. So now I'm starting to understand a little bit more, and we're loading a project setup here, and what I'm about to do will work for sure, and we will end this tobacco once and for all, and hopefully everybody learns something here. So what we're going to do is come back down here to elbow. I'm going to remove, no, I will keep what I've done here. So I'll spread this out. I did do the line group tracing spec, but what I will do is I will come back up here to P3D line group, and or we try to pull from here. I think the reason why this is not working is because it doesn't have a target object, I think is the issue. It's just like pipe tracing spec, and it doesn't know if it's like pipe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 it's supposed to be pulling this from, and there's no default. So maybe if there was a default for tracing spec, then it would come in. But right now it just comes in as question mark every single time, so it just means it doesn't know. That's why I think that it has an issue to do with some sort of targeting going on. And lastly, we will come over here, and I will get rid of this, and we will come back to the object mapping, and we are going to try to do something to the pipeline group, and it's going to be very similar to what we did with the acquired service. So as underneath the pipeline group here, we can see that we do not have the tracing PID property. There is not a PID property of PID class. Pipeline group does not have tracing property, thus I can't acquire it. So we're going to go up here to the PID drawing settings, and what we will do is we will go to class definitions. We will go to pipeline group, and earlier my guys, they made an acquired service, and you can see that the acquired service pulls it from the pipeline segments. And what I want to do here is I want to create a new one called acquired tracing, and that will be either a string or a list. I don't know right now. I'm going to go with a string first. Or maybe I should do acquisition. I'm going to go with string, and I'll pause it, and I'll come back and tell you what worked. And we know that it cannot be string, because when I do that under pipeline segments, I'm not getting tracing. That's an option, and so it's probably only listing the properties that are type string. So I'll change it to list, and when I do try to go from there, we should get it. And rather than doing a list, I actually did of type acquisition. So when I made this, I called it whatever and I did acquisition. And then what you'll see is I'm able to just select this and I do get tracing there. So I think it's acquiring that list. So now we're off to the races. We are looking pretty good. We'll come back down here to the PID object mapping, and under pipeline group, acquire tracing. There is no mapping currently, so let's go ahead and set it down here to for the plant 3D property, we'll set it to tracing spec, and I'm going to make a mistake probably next, but under pipe run components, I think the hierarchy here should be for tracing spec. I think it should be at the highest point here, and the only thing that I'm saying is going to contradict that is underneath elbow, I've actually already set it up to be line group tracing spec. So, and then underneath pipe, I think that it's also possibly, no, maybe not. Line group is not pulling anything in from spec right now. That's because it's got that map to it manually. And so I think the safest bet here is actually to get rid of it on the elbow. I think we're going to get rid of this. And we will declare it up here so it goes down to all the childs. And then now when I check the elbow, it should be in here. Perfect, it's inherited that. So I think we are good to go. The only issue possibly could be with the mapping that I have on the piping right now. But we shall see on that. Very first thing, we will run the plant refresh acquisition properties. And I clearly have no idea what I'm talking about because now the tracing spec is coming up as a question mark to begin with. So, you know, actually, I take that back. I made a mistake here and I did not run the plant refresh properties on the PID, and that is the underlying issue. So we will run the acquire property here. We'll do it on the drawing, and we'll go back and hopefully it takes care of it. Okay, that's saved. Come back here. We will just refresh our PID line list that's off the screen. You can't see it. It has been refreshed. Okay, good news. Doing that has fixed the tracing spec. You can now see that I actually have a lightning bolt on it because it's acquiring it from elsewhere and it's not mapped straight from PID list, although I did not remove that. But I think the acquisition parameter takes priority over the PID mapping, I believe. And some moment of truth on the elbow. There we go. So, in summary, what we were doing earlier with the pipe worked. It was bringing it in. The issue we were having was then on the elbows, because the elbows, I don't know exactly why it wasn't able to pull from the pipeline segment PID mapping property, but I have a feeling it has to do with when you draw an elbow, it doesn't know that it should be targeting this pipe specifically to pull that information from. But when you say, hey, pull from the pipeline group is able to say, oh, you mean all these components? Yeah, they all should have this parameter to them. So I think we learned a lot in this video, and if you have any questions, just let me know.